Hi, I'm asking you from a kind of merge of social neuroscience view and Buddhist view about the integration between mind and heart in wisdom. So we know actually a lot about perspective taking in the brain. There's a lot of research. And this is relying on a brain which is completely different than the brain circuitry which analyze the heart practices like loving kindness, compassion, the care system. And so they're really independent systems in the brain. And I think also in terms of contemplative practice, there's this separation between the view, perspective in Buddhism, and compassion. But on the other hand, I think you alluded to the necessity that these two capacity get integrated. So is wisdom only the cognitive part, or is the integration of both the real wisdom? And how would this integration work?
Okay, thank you. Well, a couple of things. You mentioned Buddhism, so let's start there. And you probably know that in Mahayana Buddhism, one of the central principles is the inseparability of wisdom and compassion. That is, the idea is that the more deeply we develop prajna, which is sophic wisdom, the more deeply prajna is developed, the more we find it is inseparable from compassion. And prajna recognizes that our fundamental interconnection, our inseparability from one another and from the world. It appreciates the vast cosmic network, or Indra's net, and sees that our well-being is inseparable from the well-being of others. So in Buddhism, there's a very clear connection between the two. And in Buddhism, one also has the idea of that mental qualities or virtues arise together. It's called the co-arising of positive mental factors. So the arising of insight or wisdom or mindfulness facilitates or tends to co-arise with qualities such as loving compassion, loving kindness and compassion, and empathic joy. So that's the Buddhist side. And then in terms of more generally, say in terms of contemporary research, this hasn't been very well thought through, but by research so far. But the general principle, I think, is that there's an ancient idea that's been around in Western philosophy for over 2,000 years, and that is the interdependence of virtues. And that's the idea that you can't have one virtue without the other, without others, that they both depend on one another and complement one another. So that while wisdom is primarily insight and understanding and affecting that insight skillfully in the world, you can't develop it without also developing ethicality and concentration and kindness. And you certainly can't develop practical wisdom, which centers around benevolent action, without developing qualities such as generosity and kindness and love and care and compassion. So, so to come back to the way you phrased your question, while I think wisdom is more an insight or cognitive capacity, it is inseparable from or dependent on emotional virtues, such as the ones you mentioned, and such others, such as empathic joy, generosity, care, concern, some of which are feminine, classic feminine virtues.